I showed up to Christmas dinner with a broken arm. What happened to you? Everyone asked. I just smiled faintly. You'll see, I said quietly. My grandson giggled nervously. She had been a handful yesterday, so my daughter-in-law had to teach her a lesson. Right then, the doorbell rang. I grabbed my recorder, gave him a small smile, and opened the door. Good evening, officer. Come right in. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me tell you how I got here. Because this story didn't start with my arm in a sling and my daughter-in-law in handcuffs. It started 3 years ago when my husband Robert passed away, leaving me with nothing but a paid-off house and a son who treated me like an ATM. At 67, people assume you're either helpless or invisible. I'm neither. But letting them think I was made life easier, and it made my plan work even better than I imagined. Robert and I had been married 42 years, nurses together for 30. We knew how to stay calm when the world fell apart. He always said I had steadier hands in emergencies. Turns out he was right. After the funeral, my son Daniel started visiting more. Daniel, 38, worked in sales and had never met a scheme he didn't love. His wife Chloe, 35, hadn't worked since they married and expected the world to provide. Mom, you shouldn't live alone in that big house, Daniel said 2 weeks after Robert's funeral. What if something happens? What if you fall, or worse? I was washing dishes from the casseroles people had brought. Daniel drummed his fingers on the kitchen table like he did as a child. I can manage myself, I said. But he didn't stop. Every conversation became a lecture on my age, my health, my supposed fragility. Chloe added vivid stories of elderly people left alone to die. Soon, I nearly believed them. 3 months later, Daniel brought up selling the house. Property values are up. You could move somewhere smaller, he suggested. I asked where, and they exchanged that married couple look, the one that screams subtle manipulation. We have a spare room, you could stay with us for a while, Chloe said. That's when I knew. This wasn't about my safety. It was about my money, my house, and their belief that I'd eventually hand it all over. The old me would have politely refused and hoped they dropped it. But grief and clarity had changed me. That night, I sat in Robert's chair, surrounded by 40 years of memories. Coffee table, bookshelves, Christmas trees, it was all mine. Daniel called the next morning with his practiced sales voice. Mom, we talked more. This is best for everyone. You'd have family around. Chloe could help with your medications. He paused when I asked about rent. Mom, we're family. You don't need to pay rent. Then the rest came out. They wanted my house sold, me living with them for free, slowly giving up my savings, and eventually, they'd have legal control over my life. I played along, pretending to consider it, and a few weeks later, I moved in. They had cleared Chloe's craft room for me. The temporary space was cramped, cluttered, and smelled faintly of vanilla candles. The first week was all smiles and Pinterest meals. By the second week, the mask slipped. Sighs, tense whispers, invisible rules. Mom, Daniel said one morning, it's better if you don't use the main bathroom during peak hours. The half bath under the stairs, he suggested, would be more convenient. I smiled and agreed. Then came the TV, the kitchen, everything. I became smaller, quieter, endlessly accommodating. The physical pressure started subtle, elbows nudged too hard, shoulders pressed, small pushes disguised as accidents. I listened, I observed. Chloe complained about babysitting me. Daniel grumbled about groceries. Then, one night, I overheard them plotting, power of attorney, complete control over my finances, turning me into a dependent. Anger wasn't enough. It was cold, calculated determination that took hold. The next morning, I started my own plan. I'd been a nurse for 30 years. I understood evidence, documentation, human behavior. I understood predators and their prey. And I knew the best way to stop them was to let them believe they'd found the perfect victim. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every day. Evelyn waited until Daniel's hand closed around Chloe's wrist before she allowed herself a slow breath. The kitchen was silent except for Chloe's ragged, furious breathing and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Daniel wasn't grabbing her out of concern for Evelyn, no, he just didn't want things to get messy. He didn't want bruises showing up in places the neighbors might notice. "Chloe," he hissed, "stop. Just, stop. We need to think." She let go of Evelyn's hair with a shove, and Evelyn staggered back against the counter. The pain in her arm was a deep throb, sharp, steady, angry. But she kept her expression still. She had learned long ago that predators fed off fear. "Think." Chloe spat. "She's been gathering evidence like she's building a court case. Against us." Daniel turned to Evelyn, breathing hard. "Mom, you're going to unlock whatever backup you made. Now. Before this gets worse." "I told you," Evelyn said quietly, "I don't remember the password." Chloe reached for her again, but Daniel stopped her with a harsh shake of his head. "No. We do this smart. She doesn't get to play helpless now. She'll remember when she realizes what's at stake." Evelyn almost smiled, but didn't. She'd been a nurse for 3 decades. She knew how abusers escalated. First intimidation. Then violence. Then desperation. And desperation was exactly where she wanted them. A distant sound drifted in, the rumble of a car engine stopping outside. Then footsteps. Firm. Purposeful. Daniel didn't notice. Chloe didn't notice. But Evelyn did. She straightened slowly. Someone knocked on the front door. Hard. 3 fast, authoritative raps. Chloe flinched. "Who is that?" Daniel's eyebrows knit together. "Probably a delivery. At 8 o'clock at night?" Evelyn thought. "Not likely." Another knock, louder, followed by a man's voice. "Police department. Welfare check." Chloe went white. Daniel's mouth fell open. "What? Why would the police?" Evelyn met his eyes. "I imagine someone was worried about me." The kitchen froze. The front door opened before either of them could move. Officers stepped inside, 2 uniformed, 1 plainclothes, taking in the scene with trained, suspicious eyes. Evelyn stood with a split lip and a swelling arm. Daniel was still gripping her wrist. Chloe's face was red and streaked with sweat and fury. And then Evelyn saw her, Dr. Walsh, standing just behind the officers, her coat still on, her expression sharp enough to cut glass. "Evelyn," she said, stepping forward gently, "are you safe?" Daniel dropped Evelyn's wrist like it burned him. "This is a misunderstanding. She's confused, she gets like this sometimes." "No," Evelyn said clearly. "I'm not confused." One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" Before she could answer, Chloe burst out, "She's lying. She's been spying on us. Recording us. She's unstable, she doesn't understand what she's doing." The plainclothes officer raised an eyebrow. "Recording you? Why exactly would she need to do that?" Evelyn touched her sore wrist and looked at him steadily. "Because I needed proof." He nodded as if he'd expected that. "We received multiple files tonight," he said. "Audio, photos, a written statement. Sent directly to our department from your attorney." Daniel's entire body went rigid. "Attorney? Right on cue," the back door opened, and Marcus Chen, neat suit, calm eyes, stepped inside holding a slim briefcase. "Good evening," he said. "I believe you received my email." Chloe exploded. "You set us up." Evelyn shook her head. "No. You set yourselves up. I simply pressed record." The plainclothes officer turned to Daniel. "Sir, did you twist your mother's arm?" Daniel swallowed. "I was trying to stop her from hurting herself. She's unstable." Dr. Walsh stepped forward like a blade. "Evelyn is mentally competent." "Fully. I've evaluated her regularly. And the injuries on her arm are consistent with being grabbed forcefully, not with a fall, not with confusion." Another officer gestured toward Chloe. "And the marks on her face." Evelyn touched her lip lightly. "That was Chloe." "She's lying." Chloe screamed. "She provoked me." Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a printed transcript. "We have audio of the entire altercation. Her threats. Her admissions. Daniel's coercion. Everything." The room went silent. The officers exchanged glances, the kind that meant decisions had already been made. "Ma'am," one said, stepping toward Chloe, "I'm placing you under arrest for assault on a vulnerable adult." Chloe lunged for Evelyn, but the officer grabbed her arms before she got close. Daniel stepped back, shaking. "You can't arrest my wife. You don't understand, my mom is manipulating the situation." The officer turned to him. "Sir, we have evidence of coercion, attempted intimidation, and possible financial abuse. I need you to come with us for questioning." Daniel looked at Evelyn, pleading, furious, betrayed. "How could you do this?" he whispered. Evelyn felt something deep and old inside her settle like smooth stones sinking to the bottom of a river. "You did it to yourselves," she said softly. "I just stopped pretending I didn't see it." As they led Daniel and Chloe out the door, the house finally fell quiet. Dr. Walsh stepped beside her. "Let's get that arm looked at." Marcus nodded. "And tomorrow, we'll start the paperwork to transfer your property back into your trust, permanently protected from them." Evelyn exhaled slowly, feeling, for the first time in years, like she wasn't carrying the whole world alone. "You know," she murmured, "Robert always said I was tougher than people thought." Dr. Walsh smiled. He was right. Evelyn glanced toward the front door where blue and red lights pulsed in the snow. "And I'm finally proving it." "Chloe, stop. This isn't helping," Daniel said, voice strained. "Not helping what?" Chloe spun toward him, eyes wide and furious. "She's been recording us, hours of us talking about money, the house, everything. If anyone heard this, we could be in serious trouble." Daniel hesitated. "Only if we actually did something wrong," his voice wavered, betraying doubt. Chloe laughed, sharp and cold. "Look at her. Look at your hands. Look at what we just did. You think a jury will care she was spying first?" For the first time, Daniel truly looked at Evelyn, her swollen lip, the bruises along her arm where he'd gripped her, the terror she no longer had to fake. His face paled. "Oh God," he whispered. "What have we done?" Chloe's face shifted, anger giving way to calculation. "And what we will do," she added, her tone unervingly calm now. She leaned in, voice measured. "Here's how it's going to go. You'll say you tripped, that you're getting clumsy, and that you need a care facility for your safety. You'll sign papers giving Daniel power of attorney. And we'll decide which facility until this passes." "And the recordings?" Evelyn asked steadily. "They disappear," Chloe said smoothly. "Along with your lawyer and anyone else you might have told." The doorbell rang. Hard. Sharp. Unexpected. Everyone froze. "Who is that?" Daniel whispered. Chloe hissed, I don't know. We aren't expecting anyone. Another knock, heavier this time. Police. Open up. Evelyn felt a calm she hadn't felt in weeks. She had prepared for this moment. Daniel's face went pale. Why would the police? Welfare check, a clear, authoritative voice called. Please open the door immediately. Chloe's jaw dropped. You called them, she said, realization dawning. I couldn't, Evelyn said. You had my phone. Then how? Open the door, the voice outside barked. Daniel turned to her, panic spreading. What do we do? Chloe smoothed her hair, forcing her face into a mask of concern. We explain it's a misunderstanding. Mom had a little fall, got confused, and someone called police by mistake. She leaned close. And you'll back up that story. Any deviation, and you'll regret it. Daniel and Chloe's voices softened as they walked to the door, pretending normalcy. Evelyn stayed still, waiting, heart calm but alert. The officers entered. A tall man with kind, steady eyes, a shorter woman with graying hair, and a young man taking notes. Ma'am, the tall officer said gently, we received a call regarding your welfare. Can you tell me your name? Evelyn Thompson, she said clearly. And are you hurt? Evelyn's eyes flicked to Daniel and Chloe, their expressions taut, then back to the officers. Yes, she said quietly. I am hurt and scared. The officers exchanged glances. We need to speak with you privately. Please wait in the living room while we separate everyone else. They left, and Evelyn finally allowed herself a small breath. Officer Rodriguez pulled out a recorder. We'll document this conversation for protection. Is that all right? Yes, Evelyn said, calm and steady. She told them everything, Chloe's assaults, Daniel's coercion, the months of emotional abuse, and the recordings she had collected. A paramedic, Tom, arrived to document and treat her injuries. He photographed bruises, examined her arm and split lip, and nodded gravely. These injuries are consistent with ongoing abuse, he said. I'm glad someone called for help. Dr. Walsh arrived moments later. Evelyn, thank goodness, she said. She confirmed the emergency protocol Evelyn had set up weeks earlier, including a text message that triggered a welfare check and the involvement of her lawyer, Marcus Chen, who had collected all evidence safely off-site. Kevin, Daniel, and Chloe tried to argue, claiming she was paranoid, but Dr. Walsh spoke clearly and firmly. Evelyn's mental status was normal, her cognitive assessments recent and perfect, and she had been consistent in reporting concerns about abuse. The officers listened, taking notes. Evelyn finally felt the weight lift. Months of planning, documenting, and staying calm had paid off. Justice was now moving forward, and she was no longer alone or invisible. Ma'am, are you saying Evelyn has been telling her doctor about abuse for weeks? Yes, Dr. Walsh replied, glancing at her phone. Since November 3rd, she came in asking me to help document what she believed was escalating elder abuse. She was clear, logical, and showed no signs of delusion or paranoia. She was planning ahead to protect herself. Neighbors had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Peterson whispered to her husband on the porch, while the young couple across the street filmed on their phones. Daniel's face flushed crimson. She never said anything, he started, then faltered. Most victims don't report abuse right away, Officer Chen said matter-of-factly. Especially elderly adults who depend financially on their abusers. They often feel trapped, powerless. But we're family, Chloe protested. We took her in when she had nowhere else. We fed her, gave her a home. While plotting to steal her house and life savings, Evelyn cut in quietly. The yard fell completely silent. Even the neighbors stopped whispering. Daniel and Chloe stared at her, frozen with disbelief and fury. That's Daniel began, then stopped. That's what Officer Rodriguez prompted. Not true, Daniel finished weakly. I have recordings, Evelyn said, her voice steady. Hours of conversations, how you plan to manipulate me into signing over power of attorney, sell my house, have me declared mentally incompetent if I resisted, and physical assaults tonight after discovering I was documenting everything. Officer Chen scribbled furiously. These recordings cover what period? From November through today, Evelyn replied. My lawyer has copies, along with photographs of past injuries and detailed documentation of psychological abuse. Detective Morrison arrived at that moment, a tall, thin man in his 50s with an air of calm experience, accustomed to family dysfunction. What do we have? He asked Rodriguez. Elderly victim of ongoing domestic abuse, Rodriguez replied. Documented evidence, medical records, recordings. Suspects are son and daughter-in-law with apparent financial motives. Morrison nodded and approached. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Detective Morrison. It seems you've been planning for this. I've been protecting myself, Evelyn corrected. I hoped it wouldn't come to this, but I prepared just in case. Smart thinking. Are you ready to press charges? Evelyn looked toward Daniel and Chloe. Daniel's gaze was fixed on the ground, calculating. Chloe was feigning distress, but it was unconvincing. These were the people who had moved in under the guise of family, only to isolate, humiliate, and physically assault her. Yes, Evelyn said firmly. Assault, elder abuse, and fraud. Morrison signaled officers. Daniel and Chloe were handcuffed, escorted to separate police vehicles. Evelyn felt no triumph, only sadness. The son she had loved, the young man she'd raised, was gone, replaced by someone who saw her as a resource. Yet, as the ambulance doors closed behind her, she also felt something she hadn't in months: safety. The hospital was quiet for a Friday night. Dr. Martinez examined her injuries while Officer Chen and Morrison waited outside. Dr. Walsh reviewed her medical history with staff. You'll have significant bruising for a week or two, Dr. Martinez said, treating her split lip and grip injuries. We'll do X-rays to ensure no underlying damage. Necessary? Evelyn asked. At 67, ongoing elder abuse injuries can be more serious than they appear. Documentation is essential for legal action. While she underwent X-rays, Marcus Chen, her lawyer, arrived. Energetic and experienced in elder law, he had already filed an evidence package with the police: 47 audio files, 36 photos, financial documents, and medical records of escalating abuse. What happens now? Evelyn asked. They get arrested, charged, and you're protected, Marcus said. Emergency restraining order prevents contact or entry to your property. You'll be safe. Dr. Walsh smiled from the doorway. How do you feel? Like I've been hit by a truck, Evelyn admitted. But also, free. The psychological abuse alone is substantial, Dr. Walsh said. Coupled with physical assault and financial fraud, the case is strong. Detective Morrison sat nearby with a recorder. How long have you been planning this? I started recording in November when I realized their plans, Evelyn said. But I began preparing the moment I moved in and noticed their attitude. They treated me like a problem to manage, not a person to care for. I needed witnesses and a protocol in case violence escalated. Morrison nodded approvingly. Smart. Many elderly victims lack the resources or presence of mind to protect themselves. I was a nurse for 30 years, Evelyn said. I knew what could happen if I stayed passive. I wasn't going to become another statistic. Dr. Martinez returned. X-rays clear. No fractures, but you'll be sore. Follow up with Dr. Walsh for healing. Are these injuries consistent with assault? Morrison asked Dr. Walsh. Absolutely, she confirmed. The bruising, grip marks, and timing all align with her account. Marcus pulled up a chair. We need next steps. You can't return to Daniel and Chloe's house. Do you have a safe place? I can get a hotel until I plan next steps. Your house? Dr. Walsh asked. It's still mine, Evelyn said. They were hoping I'd become dependent enough to sign it over. You can go home, Marcus said. Locks will be changed tomorrow. Legally, it's yours, and you have every right to live there. For the first time since Robert's death, Evelyn felt the word home mean something again. Sitting in the hospital bed, she imagined her house, hers, safe, her space, free from manipulation or hidden threats. Daniel and Chloe would face charges for elder abuse, assault, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The restraining order would keep them 500 feet away. Detective Morrison closed his notebook. One of the most well-documented elder abuse cases I've seen. Your recordings, medical records, and financial documents will make convictions likely. Jail time is significant. Even with plea deals, they face years in prison and fines. Alone in the quiet hospital room, Evelyn reflected. 6 months ago, she'd been a grieving widow under pressure to surrender her independence. Now, she was a survivor who had planned, documented, and escaped her abusers. She had been invisible when necessary and fierce when required. She touched her split lip and smiled, thinking of her home. Tomorrow, she would sleep in her own bed, reclaim her space, and begin rebuilding the life Daniel and Chloe had tried to steal. Tonight, she was finally safe. Marcus drove her to the house the next morning. The driveway looked familiar yet strange, smaller, older, winter garden beds neglected, front porch lights still glowing. It was hers. No rules, no fear, no hidden cameras. Looks untouched, Marcus said after checking the basement. They were waiting for me to sign over power of attorney, Evelyn said. To make everything look legal. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Walsh's name flashed on the screen. Evelyn, how are you feeling this morning? Sore, I admitted, but glad to be home. That's good to hear, Dr. Walsh said. I wanted to let you know Detective Morrison called. Daniel and Chloe were released on bail a few hours ago, but restraining orders are in place. They can't contact you or come within 500 feet of your property. And if they violate it? I asked. They go straight back to jail, and their bail will be revoked. Detective Morrison emphasized, call 911 immediately if they show up or try to reach you. After hanging up, Marcus went over the legal papers with me, restraining orders, criminal charges, and measures to secure my finances and medical records. What about the house they're living in? I asked. Marcus gave a grim smile. That's their problem now. You have no obligation to support their lifestyle. Judges generally wouldn't force you to. They'll probably lose the house, mortgage plus legal fees will hit them hard. Daniel earns decently, but not enough to cover this. After Marcus left, I wandered through my house alone for the first time in months. Everything was as I had left it. Robert's reading chair by the window, his book still on the nightstand, his coffee mug waiting in the sink. I realized freezing everything in time hadn't preserved his memory, it had stalled my own healing. I cleaned, reorganized, and reclaimed the space. Robert's mug went into the cabinet, his books returned to the shelf, my own books took their place on the nightstand. I rearranged the living room so the chairs faced the window instead of the TV, creating a personal reading nook. Sunday morning, Mrs. Peterson called. Evelyn, I'm so glad you're home. I saw the police Friday night, I've been worried sick. Is everything okay? There was some trouble with Daniel and Chloe, I said cautiously, but it's resolved. Trouble? Honey, I saw the arrests. Are you saying that boy was hurting you? Yes, I said simply. I'm safe now, and they can't come near me. Well, I never. And here I always thought Daniel was such a fine young man. Shows how wrong you can be. Remember, you can call me anytime, day or night. I'm right next door. Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. That means a lot. And good for you for standing up. Many women your age would have suffered in silence. Realizing the news of the arrest had likely spread, I decided to inform my sister Linda in Phoenix first. She was 5 years younger and more dramatic than me. Linda, you need to hear this from me, I said. Daniel and Chloe tried to exploit me, manipulate me, and even assaulted me. I have recordings, legal documentation, and the police have intervened. There was a long pause. Evelyn. I'm just trying not to drive over there myself and confront them. They're in enough trouble already. Are you okay? Hurt? Need me to come? I'm hurt, but I'm healing. I'm home, with new locks and a restraining order. I'll be fine. I'm so proud of you. You planned everything carefully, documented it, and protected yourself. You're amazing. That evening, I sat in Robert's chair, watching the sunset through the clean windows. The phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Thompson. This is Detective Morrison. I wanted to update you on the case. What happened? I asked. Daniel and Chloe's lawyers contacted the prosecutor. They want a plea bargain. Your evidence, recordings, medical documentation, financial records, is overwhelming. They know they can't win at trial, so they're seeking reduced sentences. What does that mean for me? You likely won't have to testify. They'll be convicted felons, making it much harder for them to exploit anyone else. After the call, I made tea and sat with a legal pad, not writing chores, but dreams. Travel, I would finally see Europe, the trip Robert and I had dreamed of before cancer stole him. Volunteering, years of nursing had shown me ways to help others. Friends, reconnecting with those I'd drifted from after Robert died. And most importantly, trusting myself again. Gaslighting had made me doubt my own judgment for months, but now I knew, I had been right about Daniel and Chloe. I had survived because I was careful, smart, and proactive. Monday morning, the doorbell rang. 2 women I didn't recognize were at the porch. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Janet Morrison from Channel 7 News, and this is Dave, my cameraman. We're doing a story on elder abuse and understand you recently survived a dangerous situation. Would you speak with us? Initially, I wanted to refuse. But then I thought of others like me, isolated, intimidated, afraid. I'll think about it, I said. I called Marcus. A news interview could help. Public awareness is critical, and your story shows that victims can fight back, but only if you're comfortable. I'll tell the truth, I said. Abuse is real, often from family, and documentation is crucial before it escalates. I invited them in. Janet was warm, intelligent, and focused on empowerment rather than sensationalism. What should other elderly people know about abuse? She asked. Financial pressure is often the first sign, I said. Sudden interest in your home, medical care, or finances, ask why. Are they genuinely concerned, or do they have their own motives? How did you find courage to document abuse? No one would save me except myself. I could accept victimization or prepare evidence and act. What advice for those in a similar situation? Document everything: conversations, injuries, finances. Tell trusted friends or medical professionals. Don't wait for violence to escalate. The segment aired that evening. It was carefully edited, focusing on prevention and empowerment. My phone rang non-stop, Dr. Walsh, Linda, Mrs. Peterson, each expressing pride and gratitude. An hour later, I answered a number I didn't know. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Carol Stevens. I saw your story. Thank you. My daughter and son-in-law have been pressuring me to sell my house. Your story made me realize trusting my instincts isn't selfish, it's survival. We talked for 20 minutes. Sharing my story had been worth it. If it helped even one person avoid abuse, it was worth any loss of privacy. Tuesday, Detective Morrison called again. Plea negotiations were moving fast. Daniel faced 18 months plus probation, Chloe, 12 months. They would pay restitution for medical costs and counseling. Financial fraud charges were dropped to expedite convictions without a lengthy trial. Your case was so well documented, taking it to trial would have been a waste of resources, he said. For the first time in months, I felt the future stretching out ahead of me, bright, full of possibilities, and entirely mine. That afternoon, I called a travel agent. I want to take a cruise, I said. Somewhere warm, somewhere I can relax and forget all the stress for a while. How about the Mediterranean, she suggested. We have a wonderful 14-day cruise leaving from Barcelona in February. Stops in Rome, Florence, Athens, Istanbul, all the classics. That sounds perfect. Will I be traveling alone? Yes, I said. And I'm really looking forward to it. After booking, I called Dr. Walsh to discuss vaccinations and any medical clearances I might need. Then I rang Linda. Evelyn, that's wonderful. You deserve it after everything you've been through, she said. I keep thinking Robert would have loved this trip. You two always talked about seeing the Mediterranean. Then I'll take him with me, I said softly. His memory, the love we shared, the dreams we made together. Just because he isn't physically here doesn't mean he can't be part of it. That evening, I opened the photo albums Robert and I had made over our 42 years together. Pictures of Niagara Falls on our honeymoon, the Grand Canyon, Daniel's 10th birthday, his college graduation. Looking at them didn't bring sadness anymore. It reminded me of the decades of genuine love and happiness I'd shared with someone extraordinary. Daniel and Chloe might have tried to steal my future, but they couldn't take my past. And now, my future was entirely mine to shape. 2 weeks later, I watched Daniel and Chloe enter the courthouse to plead guilty. Daniel to elder abuse and assault, Chloe to the same. They accepted the negotiated sentences, 18 months for Daniel, 12 for Chloe, plus probation and restitution. But as we left, Detective Morrison pulled me aside. Evelyn, there's something you should see. During the investigation, we executed a search warrant on Daniel and Chloe's home. We found documents that go beyond the original charges. What kind of documents? Financial papers, insurance policies, evidence suggesting this wasn't their first attempt at exploiting elderly family members. He handed me a manila envelope. Marcus has copies, but I thought you'd want to see these yourself. Once home, I opened it. The first item was a life insurance policy on Robert, purchased 3 months before his death, with Daniel listed as the beneficiary. The premiums came from an unknown account. Next were emails between Daniel and someone named David Chen, a private investigator, discussing how to accelerate plans and remove obstacles. A credit report in my name showed my assets and debts, run without my knowledge. Then came a copy of our will from 10 years ago, leaving everything to Daniel, but someone had scribbled notes in the margins, calculating asset values and discussing how to expedite inheritance. I called Marcus immediately. Marcus, you need to come over. I think they were planning more than financial fraud. He arrived quickly and examined the documents, horror growing on his face. Evelyn, this suggests they may have had a hand in Robert's death. Robert had died of a heart attack. He had one small insurance policy, nothing like this, I said, showing Marcus the papers. Purchased 3 months before his cancer went into remission. The timing is unsettling. Could they have killed him? We need to turn this over to Detective Morrison immediately. But yes, it's possible. The following days were filled with interviews, investigations, and shocking revelations. Specialists from homicide and forensic divisions re-examined Robert's body. Daniel and Chloe's financial records went back 5 years. They had taken out life insurance policies on Robert, Chloe's grandmother, and Daniel's uncle. Autopsies revealed signs of digitalis and insulin poisoning, subtle, almost undetectable, but deliberate. I remembered Daniel's sudden attentiveness during Robert's final weeks, monitoring medications and insisting someone supervise pill schedules. They were managing his meds, I whispered to Morrison. Digitalis could have been slipped into his regular heart medications, chest pains, shortness of breath, and then cardiac arrest, perfectly mimicking a heart attack. Morrison studied me. Evelyn, after Robert died, did Daniel or Chloe show unusual interest in your medications or health? Yes, I said. They insisted on organizing my pills and appointments. If their financial plan hadn't worked, I think their next step was to try to eliminate me too. The realization hit me: Plan B, murder me like Robert and the others, collect insurance money, inherit assets. I shivered, but also felt a surge of pride. Something had warned me to stay vigilant, to document, to plan my escape. That instinct had likely saved my life. The new charges were swift: first-degree murder for Robert, Chloe's grandmother, and Daniel's uncle, attempted murder for the plot against me, insurance fraud, conspiracy. Bail was revoked. They faced life in prison. Sitting in my living room, reading the news coverage, Linda called. "Evelyn, are you okay?" "I just saw the headlines." "I'm okay," I said, and realized it was true. Angry, heartbroken, shocked, but okay. Part of me always sensed something was off. The timing, his focus on my assets, the pressure, it never felt right. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said, looking around at the room Robert and I had shared, "I rebuild. But this time, I trust myself completely." 6 months later, I stood on the deck of a Mediterranean cruise, watching the sun set over the Greek islands. Detective Morrison called. "The trial is over," he said. "Daniel and Chloe have both been convicted. Daniel, life without parole. Chloe, life with parole possible after 30 years. How do I feel?" I whispered, almost to myself. Justice was served. They'll never hurt anyone else the way they hurt us. I gazed at the horizon, letting the breeze wash over me. A year ago, I had been a grieving widow, manipulated by my own son. 6 months ago, a victim fighting to survive. Now, I was traveling alone through one of the most beautiful places on earth, free, financially, emotionally, spiritually. The cruise exceeded every expectation. I wandered the ruins of Athens, admired Florence's art, navigated Istanbul's bustling markets. I ate the foods Robert and I had dreamed of tasting. I took photographs, collected souvenirs, and met other women traveling alone, women reclaiming their lives, refusing invisibility. One evening in Rome, I met Sarah, a retired teacher from Oregon who had left an isolating marriage after 40 years. "People ask why I waited so long," she said over dinner, shaking her head. "As if there's an expiration date on deciding you deserve better." I smiled, realizing she was right. The expiration date wasn't real. Survival, self-respect, freedom, they could come at any age, if you were willing to fight for them. Another woman I met on the cruise was Patricia, a retired nurse from Canada who had moved across the country after her adult children pressured her to sign over her house. They said they were worried about my safety, she explained as we toured the Sign Chapel. But it was really about the inheritance. Once I realized that, leaving became easy. Hearing her story reminded me that mine wasn't unique. Elder abuse was far more common than most people realized, often coming from those who were supposed to protect us. But it also showed me that survival was possible, and that life after trauma could be not just bearable, but full of beauty and opportunity. On the cruise's final night, I received an unexpected invitation to the captain's table for dinner, an honor for passengers who had made the voyage special. Captain Rodriguez, a seasoned sailor in his 50s, greeted me warmly. "This is my first time traveling alone," I admitted. "I thought I might be too nervous to enjoy it after Robert passed, but it's been incredible." "Solo travel can be daunting at first," he agreed, "but some of our happiest passengers are independent women exploring the world on their own terms. There's something liberating about it." After dinner, he walked me to the deck, overlooking the sparkling lights of Barcelona. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "I don't know your story, but I can tell you've endured something difficult. You carry yourself like someone who has faced hardship and come out stronger." "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those who recognize it," he said. "You've chosen to let your experience transform you, rather than defeat you. That's rare and remarkable." The next morning, as I disembarked with my luggage and hundreds of photographs, I realized he was right. The Evelyn who had boarded 2 weeks ago, grieving and raw, was not the same woman leaving. I was calm, confident, and ready for the future. I spent 3 more days in Barcelona before returning home, visiting museums, cafes, and little shops filled with books in unfamiliar languages. I ate breakfast on outdoor terraces and dined alone at quiet restaurants, savoring the independence and the freedom of being truly on my own. On the flight home, I made a list of goals: volunteer at a domestic violence shelter, travel more, perhaps take a photography class, reconnect with old friends, and live fully in a way that honored both Robert's memory and my own survival. When I landed, Mrs. Peterson was waiting to pick me up. I'd asked her to drive instead of taking a taxi, realizing I was ready to accept help from people who genuinely cared. "Evelyn," she exclaimed as I emerged from the arrival gate. "You look incredible, relaxed, radiant, years younger." "I feel incredible," I said, and meant it. As we drove home, she filled me in on the neighborhood news. Divorces, new babies, a house sale 2 streets over. And Daniel, the article about his trial and conviction was everywhere. "You're quite the local celebrity now," she said. I looked at my home, my safe, secure house with new locks and a garden Mrs. Peterson had tended while I was away. This was mine, not a place where I was managed, tolerated, or exploited, but a place where I belonged completely. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" I asked her, carrying in my luggage. "I have photos from the trip and stories better than anything on the evening news." "I'd love that," she said. As I unlocked the door and welcomed her inside, I realized that my new life would be built not around those who tried to use me, but around people who truly valued me. It had taken 67 years to learn that lesson, but I had learned it well. I was ready to make the rest of my life count. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, when I had walked in with a broken arm and a hidden recorder, I was free, safe, and happier than I had been since Robert's passing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't retaliation, it's refusing to let those who hurt you steal your capacity for joy. I chose joy, and it made all the difference.